You ever have one of those brilliant, life-changing ideas and then nothing? The next 3 years just kind of happen? We're always told that's just laziness or a lack of ambition. But what if it's the exact opposite? What if your brain is hitting the brakes precisely because your ambition is so huge, it absolutely terrifies the part of you that's just trying to keep you safe? Well, in this explainer, we are going to dive deep into the biology of being stuck. We're going to uncover the defense mechanisms your own mind uses to protect you from what it sees as the ultimate threat. Not failure itself, but finding out you might not be who you think you are. Let's just start right here, because this really gets to the core of it. This whole thing, it's not about willpower. It's about your ego. It's about this deeply rooted biological drive to protect your identity right now. The fear isn't really about the project flopping. No, the real gut-wrenching fear is about the personal verdict that you think comes with it. See, your brain has this story it tells itself about you, that you're smart, you're capable, you're talented, and it will do literally anything to avoid a situation where that story might get proven wrong.
So, every single day, your brain makes this subconscious choice. On one side, you've got potential success. This is a beautiful, safe, imaginary world where you're a genius. Your book is a bestseller. Your company is a game changer, all because you haven't actually started yet. Your potential is limitless because it's untested. But on the other side, you've got proven failure. This is where you pour your heart and soul into something and it just doesn't work out. Now, to your brain, this isn't just a bummer. It feels like a direct physical threat to your self-concept. And when faced with those two options, your ancient survival hardware will almost always choose the safety of potential over the terrifying reality of actually trying.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the ambition paradox, then we'll uncover your ego's protective shield and the stagnation loop it creates. After that, we get to the good stuff, how to rewire your brain's alarm system, and finally, how to get yourself from the sidelines and onto the field. So let's start with this idea that sounds completely backwards. The ambition paradox. This is all about understanding why the part of your brain that wants you to succeed is so often the very same part that's holding you back. And here's the thing, it's not a bug in the system, it's a feature, and we're about to find out why.
Oh, I'm sure this one hits home for a lot of us. You're all fired up, you've got this incredible vision, you know exactly what the first step is, and then all of a sudden you notice that your bookshelf is just unbearably disorganized, or you decide it's the perfect moment to finally clean out the garage. This is not a coincidence. This isn't you being lazy. This is a deliberate, strategic move by your brain. It's a defense mechanism, and it actually has a name.
It's called self-handicapping. It's the act of creating your own obstacles, like procrastinating by cleaning, so that if you do end up failing, you've got a built-in excuse ready to go. Your ego stays safe. You didn't fail because you weren't good enough. You failed because you ran out of time, or the conditions weren't right. Honestly, just giving this a name is so powerful because it shifts it from being some personal character flaw to what it is, a known, understandable psychological pattern. You're not broken. Your brain is just running a very old piece of protection software. So now, let's pop the hood and look at the biological machinery that's driving all this. We'll call it your ego's shield. And the fuel that it runs on is a powerful emotion called anticipatory shame. And remember, this whole process isn't malicious. It's your brain's clumsy but well-intentioned attempt to keep you safe. Okay, this is the most crucial part to understand. Your brain does not know the difference between a threat to your physical body and a threat to your identity. Your self-concept, that internal story that you are smart, competent, a good person. Your brain treats that story with the same protective urgency as your heart or your lungs. So if your identity is wrapped up in being a talented artist, then the act of painting something that might be bad is, to your brain, the same as putting a vital organ in harm's way. And it will deploy every defense it has to stop that from happening. And the first key player in this whole drama is the amygdala. Just think of it as your brain's hypervigilant security guard, its identity alarm. When you even think about starting that big project, your brain runs a quick simulation, but the amygdala hijacks the process, and it only focuses on the worst-case scenario. You fail, people judge you, and you feel that horrible sinking feeling of shame. And just by detecting that simulated threat, it sounds the alarm, flooding your system with anxiety before you've even written a single word.
And that feeling the amygdala triggers, it has a name: anticipatory shame. It's that dread you feel deep in your gut, not when you actually fail, but when you simply think about the possibility of failing. It's a response to a predicted threat, not a real one. It's what makes the task feel so heavy and overwhelming. Your body is literally reacting to a horror movie that's only playing inside your head, and its number one goal becomes shutting that movie off. as fast as possible.
And the real-world fallout from this little protective shield is huge. It leads to the perfectionism trap, right? Where you convince yourself you can only start when everything is absolutely perfect, which, of course, is never. It also preserves the illusion of competence, that comforting lie we tell ourselves, oh, I could be great if I only really tried. It's a story that protects the ego but starves our potential. And ultimately, it all leads to a state of adaptive stagnation, where staying stuck actually feels safer and more rational than the emotional risk of moving forward.
Now, this whole pattern of avoidance, it's not random. In this section, we're going to map out the mechanics of what's called the protective stagnation loop. Understanding this predictable reinforcing cycle is the absolute first step to breaking it, because you'll start to see it happening in real time.
Okay, let's walk through this loop step by step. First, you have an aspiration trigger. You get inspired to start a podcast or learn a new skill. Then, immediately comes step 2, the threat simulation, as your brain pictures all the ways it could go wrong. That leads to step 3, the limbic hijack, where your amygdala hits the panic button and you feel that wave of anxiety. That's the freeze response. So in step 4, you engage in self-handicapping. You clean the kitchen, you fall down a YouTube rabbit hole, you do anything but the thing. And now for the most important part, step 5, the safety hit. The second you choose that distraction, the anxiety disappears. You feel relief. And that relief is a powerful, powerful reward that trains your brain, reinforcing this simple but destructive equation: doing nothing equals safety. This is why the loop feels so addictive and is so hard to break.
So we've diagnosed the problem and we've mapped the system that keeps it running. Now we pivot to the solution. How do we actually break this cycle? This section is all about rewiring your brain's alarm. We're going to look at the deep evolutionary reasons why this happens and then introduce some concrete tools you can use to change the programming. So why is this wiring so darn powerful? Well, it comes down to a deep evolutionary drive called status maintenance. See, for our ancestors, being part of the tribe was everything. It was survival. Being seen as incompetent or messing up could get you kicked out, which was basically a death sentence. And your brain's hardware, it hasn't really gotten the memo that things have changed. It still sees public failure, a bad presentation, a failed launch, as a fundamental threat to your social standing, and by extension, to your very survival. And neurologically, there are 2 key monitors at work here. We've met the amygdala, our identity threat detector, screaming freeze at any sign of danger to the ego, but it has a partner, the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC. This is your social error monitor, and in people who really fear failure, the ACC is hyperactive. It's constantly scanning for potential social screw-ups. It would much rather you stay in a known average state, stuck but safe, than risk a public low. Together, the amygdala and the ACC form this powerful coalition for just doing nothing. So how in the world do we bypass this ancient, powerful system? Well, the solution lies in a fundamental mindset shift. We have to stop looking at our actions as some kind of final exam on our identity. We have to stop seeing success and failure as these grand verdicts on our worth. The goal is to reframe the entire mission from identity-based success to process-based data. This means what you're doing isn't about proving you're smart. It's about gathering information. And this brings us to a practical toolkit you can use to bypass that shield. First, the micro-failure drill, which is designed to teach your amygdala that small failures are totally safe. Second, hypothesis testing, which reframes a scary goal like start a business into a simple experiment like test a product. Third, the 5-minute entry, a trick to get past that initial resistance by just committing to 5 minutes. It's too small for the alarm to even notice. And fourth, label the protection. This is just acknowledging the feeling by saying, my brain is trying to protect me, which immediately gives you some distance and control. Let's just zoom in on that first tool for a second, because I know it sounds a little crazy, but it is probably the most powerful one here. The micro-failure drill is basically exposure therapy for your ego. You intentionally perform a small, safe failure every single day. Send a text to a friend with a typo you intentionally leave in. Ask a question in a meeting that you think might sound dumb. Go to a coffee shop and just ask for a 10% discount for no reason. Every time you do this, and the world doesn't end, you're sending a new signal to your amygdala. You're teaching it through direct experience that failure is not a survival threat. You're recalibrating its alarm system one tiny safe experiment at a time. And this brings us to our final section. We've dissected the biology, we've mapped the psychology, we've got the tools. Now it's time to bring it all home and talk about what it actually means to reclaim your agency, to step off the sidelines and get onto the field of your own life. If you take only one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Failure is not an outcome. It is not a final verdict on who you are. It is simply data. That's it. Information. An experiment that didn't work tells you something incredibly valuable about what to try next. A rejected idea provides feedback. The second you shift your perspective to see every failure as just a data point, you transform it from a source of shame into a source of learning. It completely changes the game.
And this leads to a pretty profound realization. Your ego and all the biological systems that are designed to protect it, they are incredibly powerful. But their importance is something you can choose to downgrade. You can decide that your growth is more important than your ego's comfort. You can decide that the data you get from trying is more valuable than the safety of your current identity. Because your brain is trying to protect an identity that can only grow through the very things it's so afraid of.
And so we end here. The big paradox is that the brain's strategy to avoid failure, it guarantees the only kind of failure that truly matters, the failure to even try. Because sure, you can't lose a game you refuse to play, but you can't win it either. True failure isn't messing up. It's the regret of looking back and realizing you never even gave yourself a real chance. The antidote to the fear of failure is action itself.
So I'll just leave you with this question. What is that project, that ambition, that game that you've been keeping safe in the land of potential? What game has your protective brain been keeping you on the sidelines of? Because understanding all this science, that's the first step. The next one, the one that really matters, that one's yours to take.